We're in fact going to now be in conversation with Richa Arora of Tata Consumer. She'll be with us in just a couple of moments. We've been getting you perspective from a whole host of essential goods suppliers as well to understand really, what's at play currently, how distribution's panning out, the demand scenario, and lots more. So all of that's coming up. In terms of trade as well, we'll just touch upon that, give you a sense of how markets are doing so far in today's session. And we still have some gains coming in on those pharma names, on some of those select cement names. But muted today. It's not a runaway day today. In fact, a lot of pressure continuing when it comes to the financials, as well as on names like, like a Z, which have been seeing some amount of selling pressure, Titan as well, and a couple of those select auto names are actually sitting out so far in today's session. But it's really the financials where we're seeing a little bit of pressure building up so far in today's session. Still counting on earnings as well, of course. We've already had Wipro watching at a TCS, although that's really not what perhaps the market is looking at right now. I think all the attention is more focused on the banks and really the kind of delinquencies we could possibly see. And we all know that pharma has emerged as the new leader of the market. So a lot of the buying interest, of course, continues to remain on that side of the market as well. But let me see if Richa Arora is with us and if we can go across to her and begin that conversation as well and get a sense of how her business is dealing with it. We just spoke to Mr. Unikrishnan of Thermax as well, completely different sector. And, he said while Thermax was still relatively better suited, a lot of companies would be facing some, huge difficulties with regards to working capital going forward as well. There is a meeting slated today between the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. So everyone's wondering whether or not today is going to be the day when perhaps we do see some announcements coming through with regards to a stimulus, with regards to some kind of bailout package for specific industries. We all know that the likes of aviation, for example, are reeling right now. We also spoke to Ajay Singh, Nayantara speaking with him exclusively, and he was also talking about how it's, according to him, it's definitely possibly the worst hit sector at the moment, and this will really change the way people manage their costs and the businesses choose to function going forward. Richa Arora with us now. Richa, great to have you with us. You have such a diverse portfolio and so many essentials under your umbrella as well. Talk to us about, whether or not you've seen a spike in demand for these products during the lockdown. Has that meant a need to increase production to keep up with the panic buying? Is that the situation that you've seen or come across?
Apologies, I cannot hear you. I did not get most of the question. Could you please repeat that?
No worries. Yes, let me repeat it. I was asking if, given the wide, diverse portfolio of essentials that you have, whether you saw a spike in demand and panic buying coming in once the lockdown was announced. And if that's the case, whether you're also doing your bit to ramp up production. Give us a sense of how things are playing out.
So, yes, thank you for sharing that. We did see initial panic buying. We certainly saw that in the case of pulses part of our portfolio, because that's a very essential food. And I think to some extent in our other products also, it is probably maybe a natural outcome of an uncertain situation which consumers were expecting to face. And I think as far as production is concerned, we have to balance out the needs of ensuring supply of essential commodities while following the guidelines and protocols of safe and healthy practices. Right. So I think the situation has certainly improved today. If I would have spoken to you 2 weeks ago, it would certainly have been a very different story. But as we speak, the situation is improving day by day. And we are, I would say, getting a lot of support now from the state authorities, from the district authorities. I think Ministry of Home Affairs has been very, very active in terms of sending out all the relevant notification based on feedback from industry. So, the key problem which we faced in the initial days, and that's getting sorted out now as we speak, was logistics. It was a huge challenge because there was a notification which first spoke about essential commodities. And while we were a part of the essential commodities and that was never an issue, the fact that 50% of the trucks on the highways were stuck with non-essential products did create a problem in terms of movement. I think MHA notifications clarified that. I think the subsequent notifications in terms of allowing vehicle movement where the driver doesn't even need a pass, which was what was mandated earlier, and just a valid license is enough. I think those are all positive things which have happened. I think this Sunday, Monday, this just early on in the week, there is a transport notification which has come, which talks about even facilitating for the drivers, other aspects about support to them as they're moving through the highways. So I think things are improving, and day by day we see a positive improvement on ground. Talking about the one part of the supply chain is movement from where we produce to the distribution hubs, and the other is the movement to the final consumer. And I think that was obviously also severely impacted in the initial days. That situation is improving, but as is to be expected, if you look at the COVID map of India, the challenges would be there in states and districts where COVID cases are detected and there are the hotspots. And as of today, we know that 25% of the districts have significant amount of COVID cases. Another 25% are potential hotspots. So it is a challenging situation, but I think everyone is finding solutions on ground and working at both production, logistics, and last mile connectivity.
In fact, taking that forward, you've also tied up with Flipkart. How is that working out? Distribution to tier 2, tier 3 towns, rural areas. How effective has that been so far?
So I would say that there are two aspects to it. In the initial days of the lockdown, because there were curbs on interstate and inter-district movements, obviously what we call the upcountry markets, we weren't able to service. That has changed over the last 10 days. And again, the directive from MHA saying that interstate movement has to be facilitated was specifically called out in that in the transport notification. So I think that has helped us certainly. I think what you spoke about, the tie-up with Flipkart, this has been a period of, I would say, learning. And if we are able to take some of these best practices going forward, I think the industry will be in a I would say another stronger position, because I think these are channels which a situation which is an emergency kind of a situation has forced a lot of companies to look at. But these are potential channels for the future. So when you talk about Flipkart, where yes, some of our distributors are on their marketplace model, and Flipkart will aggregate and deliver. We have also tied up with Zomato and Scootsie in certain parts of the country to deliver. Very importantly, we are also reaching out direct to a lot of apartment societies, especially in cities like Mumbai and NCR, and even down south in Chennai and Bangalore. And I think that is a potential direct-to-consumer channel which is here to stay. Similarly, I think telecalling, which we normally don't associate with a category like FMCG, has actually really come to the fore for us, and it was a lifesaver in a lot of ways, because in the initial days, none of the field force should have been out in the market, and they were not out in the market, and a lot of order taking was happening on phone through teleselling. And I think some of these good practices which have been adopted in a situation where we need to address the problem differently, I think these are opportunities which will help us grow business when things turn to normal. So these are best practices we should actually not let go. And I think in a similar vein, to me, one of the most interesting learnings of this exercise and the observations of what has happened in the last few weeks has been the level of, I would say, collaboration. And one sees it at the community level, where people are reaching out to the more vulnerable sections, whether it's the elderly in their local areas, or supporting in other ways, or at within the
Richa, if
corporate
I may come in,
system
Richa,
itself,
right,
in terms of actually,
sure,
having formed a kind of a group of people who are able to leverage each other's
sure.
logistics opportunities, or not having an empty truck travel from point A to point B, because that's an efficient way of doing things, and that efficiency should continue. And it's also a green way of doing things. It's a more sustainable way of doing things. So I think all these are things which positive things which have happened, which I would want, and I would push for them to be there in the future.
Right. Richa, finally, just wanted to get in a take from you. With this lockdown now getting extended and companies not working at full capacity, what are you gathering in terms of inventory of essential products? What has been the impact as well with respect to the challenges that you're facing for labor and staff with the migrant workers?
So I'm not sure I got the whole question, but I did hear you mention labor. Yes, so I think 2 weeks ago, if one asked what were the top priority, it was logistics and labor. I think logistics is getting sorted as we speak. Labor will be a bit of a challenge, but again, the situation is, I would say, different for labor, which was employed in industries which are shut because of the lockdown. So whether you talk about construction, or you talk about retail, or you talk about restaurants, and so on and so forth. But for essential products like us, the labor problem is a little different. We do have people who come back to work because they have been reassured by the safety protocols and the health practices that we have put in, which actually we put in much before the lockdown was announced. So I think that is a very reassuring thing for workforce to come back. The other thing is that it requires, what I was talking about earlier, engagement with the community. And what we found is that in the local communities, the village sarpanch level, the dialogue, when it starts happening there, we get kind of, I would say, a positive approach to labor coming back, because the fear of contracting COVID is very real with them. And families are concerned, they themselves are concerned, and we have to overcome that fear by actually putting in place and kind of constantly working on the safety and health practices. We are also looking at, as we speak, about COVID insurance for the labor, which works for us. And I think these are the measures which will go a long way in getting labor back. I think the government from its end is also thinking about activating possibly the whole ASHA workers and the local NGOs to kind of educate labor about where really the safety and hygiene practices are, and where they can go without fear. So I think all these things should also start addressing the labor problem. But yes, today it is a challenge for us to operate at the levels even prescribed by the government.
All right. Richa, we'll let you go on that note. Thanks much for taking time out and joining in, giving us a sense as to what has been the experience for you at Tata Consumer with respect to essential goods, the overall distribution, the labor issues as well. So that's the take coming in, as we are touching base with a whole host of corporates just to understand how they are coping with respect to essential goods.